Greetings. My name is Eric Lang, and this is another installment on my channel, author Eric Lang. This is an installment regarding people-centric project management phenomena in project management. This is taken from my book, Engagement, Focus, Intention, and Project Management. There are almost 80 of these interesting phenomena. The one that I've chosen for today is the 98% problem. And I've worked at more than a few places over the years, and every single one has suffered from this. And this is where projects are started and then not completed. And 98% complete seems to be like the magic number, but there's some plus or minuses in there. And before I really get into this, I want to give a story that I think exemplifies how this is endemic to the human psychology. And there was a story about somebody who was hiking in Death Valley. They were like a competitive hiker. They would set a path, hike it, time themselves, and then try to beat their time. So they'd hike it again. And then because it was Death Valley and it was so hot, water was critical to the success of the hike. But then the amount of water that you carried also negatively impacted your completion time. So they were not only calculating their time to get from through the path and back again, but they're figuring out how little water they could carry to bring themselves all the way back so they could maximize their time, or I should say minimize their time. This person was found dead within sight of their car. And nobody could figure this out because there were gallons of water in the car that they could have consumed and it would have saved their life. And the answer is they had timed it all out. So they knew the exact minimum amount of water that they could carry, that they could get all the way through their route and back to the car. And they had calculated it perfectly. They didn't do anything wrong. But apparently when they came back and they were within sight of their car, not even 100 yards, maybe even 100 feet, they paused to rest for just a moment. And then the dehydration in their body, their blood coagulated or thickened, and they apparently had a heart attack and died. It's an urban legend. You can look it up online. But this is the 98% problem. Instead of driving completion across that finish line, grabbing a big jug of water and having a celebratory drink, they took a pause before completion. And you'll see this in project management. The amount of effort it takes to get the project from 0% to 98% complete seems to be almost the same amount of energy it takes to get from 98 to 100% complete. Once human beings are within sight of the finish line, they begin to slack off and be distracted. Perhaps a variation on the shiny object distraction. Other opportunities become very visible and they start to jump off. As a project manager, knowledge of the existence of this people-centric project management phenomenon is critical to the success of the project. You have to know that the human beings, the contributors involved in your project, when you get close to completion, their distraction is going to increase. They're going to look at other projects. They're going to apply less and less energy to the completion of this project. And the 98% problem will rear its head and begin to negatively impact the velocity of project completion, and then the overall completion date will begin to slip. So what can you do about this since it's so pervasive? I've been to so many places, and they'll talk about how projects just aren't getting done. And you'll go in and you'll find resources have been allocated, purchases have been made. I mean, you have all these unrealized assets laying around, projects that are just unfinished. And it wasn't because of a technical complication. It wasn't because of available resources. It wasn't because of the amount of time. It was simply because nobody realized that when you get within sight of the completion date, the finish line, people are going to get distracted. And the project manager did not prepare for that. So realize ahead of time this is going to happen. And as you near the end of the project, that is not the time to reduce the amount of tension in the project. That is the time to increase the tension. And you do this through engagement. Hence the name of the book, Engagement, Focus, Intention, Project Management. As you near that 98% finish line, engagement must increase. Okay, the tempo of communication with the contributors has to increase, and that tension has to be kept on the project, not lessened, so you can pull that across. You got to maintain that focus across the finish line. So it's like chewing gum. Once the flavor's out of the chewing gum, everybody stops chewing it. And I think for a lot of projects, when they're chewing that chewing gum, they get the 98%, the flavor's gone, and the part that they enjoy has left the project, so they get distracted and move on. As project manager, you have to know this is coming and be ready to stop it, to engage, focus, keep that tension, drag that project across the finish line. I would say as project manager, the two parts there is at the beginning of a project, getting it all put together, making sure the scope is correct, preventing scope creep and all of that. And then that last 2% of the project, preventing your resources from becoming distracted or allocated elsewhere. And then the ultimate unrealization of the project's value. You have to be prepared for these things. So 98% problem, very real. I could spend all day giving example after example. I'm sure people who have heard this also realize it. Last week was the hooking on, which has to do with scope creep. That's on the front end of the project. This phenomena here, 98% problem, is on the back end of the project. So there's also a lot more to happen in between, and those will be the focus of future installments. This is installment 15, and as I've mentioned in the past, I've probably at least 80 of these. So we have 65 more to go. I want to thank everyone for taking the time. Remember to maintain focus at the end of your project so that you can have successful project completion. And thank you for your time.